If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably because a child you love and care for is differently wired. Are they also struggling in their current educational setting, seen only for what they're doing wrong while longing for positive relationships with peers and others? Envision a world where your child's unique abilities are not just recognized, but celebrated. A world where they can connect with others and their true potential is seen and appreciated. The Strength-Based Assessment Lab's mission is to build a world for your child just like that. Through its innovative approach, it aims to empower students, families, educators, and professionals to create positive, effective, and collaborative learning experiences. Be a part of shaping a brighter future for your child. Visit www.bgs.edu to learn more about what a strength-based assessment could mean for your family. That's bgs.edu.
And then I met a lady, and she was a part of this really phenomenal group of single moms that are all over the world. And these mothers, they enlightened me, and I was so in awe that they were teachers, principals, and they were living all over the world with their children, and they were traveling. And I was just like, I can do this. I can really, really do this.
Welcome to the Tilt Parenting Podcast, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. I'm your host, Debbie Reber, and today my guest is Brandi Stephens, a single mom from Texas who's raising a 13-year-old girl with Asperger's. In the coming months, I'll be bringing more episodes featuring real parents in the trenches because I think it's important to hear how other parents whose children are wired differently in a variety of ways are carving out their own path. I wanted to talk to Brandi both because I wanted to share the story of a single mom, as I know we have many single moms here in the Tilt community, and I know the responsibilities and day-to-day experience is different than it is for those of us who are living with a partner. But I also wanted to bring Brandi on because she herself took a huge leap of faith last year when she moved abroad to Kuwait to be a teacher and provide a different experience for her and her daughter. I found our conversation super inspiring, and Brandi's optimistic outlook is infectious. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Before I get to the episode, a quick little PSA. Did you know that some of our production costs for the podcast are being offset by generous donations of listeners like you? That's right, we're now able to outsource our final post-production costs, which is fantastic and greatly appreciated, as producing a weekly podcast is more than a little time-consuming. My goal is to eventually have all the post-production tasks outsourced. So if you like what we're doing here and you'd like to help us reach that goal, please consider making a monthly donation. It's fast, it's easy, and pain-free, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help us. To support us, visit patreon.com/tiltparenting. And now I'll get on with the show. Hey, Brandi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I am good, and I'm happy to be welcoming you onto the show. We corresponded via email a long time ago now, kind of soon after I launched Tilt, I think, and I know you've had many adventures since that first email back and forth. So would you mind, just so listeners can kind of understand who you are and your perspective, tell us a little bit about yourself and your daughter and what's happening in your world?
All right. Well, my name is Brandi Stephens, and I'm a single mom, and I've been a single mom for 13 years. And I have a 13-year-old daughter named Briana, and she has Asperger's. But a little bit about myself. We actually moved back to the United States here recently from living abroad in the Middle East, Kuwait to be exact. And I was a school teacher. It was an awesome adventure for the both of us. My daughter was able to learn Arabic really, really fluently. She speaks it fluently. I don't.
Wow.
I think that's one of the unique things about autistic children, that once it's something that they specifically want to do and they just hone into that one thing and they just go for it. And any little thing that she specifically likes, she just goes for it. Mm. And this was one of the things that she specifically wanted to learn because she couldn't understand our cab drivers and she couldn't understand anyone else. So she wanted to learn Arabic, and she's fluent in it and I'm not. So this time we're planning to go back, and I'm actually going back as an administrator. And this time I'm hoping that I'm going to give it my all to learn Arabic. But prior to us going abroad, I was living here, and it was just so many different issues that I had as a single mother. And I think the biggest issue was the insecurity within myself, because I thought that I did something wrong. And first, my daughter was misdiagnosed. They said that she had ADHD. And later to find out that that's not what it was. It was me doing research and just different things, patterns that I saw within her. And I knew that it was not ADHD. And then she was even given medicine that did not work with her. It just turned her into this different being that I didn't want to be around, because she wasn't her own unique, funny self. So took her off of that medicine, and she's now her lovable self. And we have our ups and downs, but it goes with being a parent of a teenager.
Yeah. I'm in that space. My child's going to be 13 in 2 months, and I am noticing a lot of changes lately.
Well, the change I wasn't expected for, but it's okay. We talk often, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I would definitely tell any parent of a child, whether they have special needs or not, especially when they become this age where their bodies are going through changes and they're feeling certain type of ways about themselves. And then I had to remember I was once 13 and I felt that same way that she felt. So I could relate to her. So we talk all the time, and it probably drives her insane sometimes. Like, why is she talking to me about this again? But I just want her to feel comfortable so she can come to me and talk to me about whatever. And then we also started doing therapy, and therapy helped us. And it became a problem for a lot of people that I knew, especially within my community, because we're African American. And unfortunately, within, the African American community, they don't like going to get therapy from doctors. And I knew something was wrong with my child, and I needed to have that other missing piece to kind of help us congeal everything together so I could know how to approach her and talk to her. And, I could have a good space, and I could understand how to connect with my daughter on a different level. And then it was also an issue because a lot of times people didn't understand, well, she doesn't have autism, or that's not what it is. She's just misbehaving, or they wanted to call it other things. But I just felt like I needed to do this for me and her. And it was very, very tough. It was a tough journey because when she started having issues at school, she was in elementary school. As a matter of fact, it started, I think, when she was in the second grade, and I was still in undergrad. So I was struggling in school. She was struggling in school, and I was just trying to get a bachelor's degree at that time. And it was really, really tough. And I had no support from my family, no one that could understand the different difficulties that I was going through as a parent of a child that was just differently wired, whose thought process was totally different from other children. Does that mean that she's an oddball or anything? No, it just means that she looks at the world in just these unique, amazing eyes than other kids. And that makes her unique to me. So we got through the hard part, elementary school. And so that brings us here. And now she's in the 7th grade. And we're going to be going back to the Middle East, and she's going to be going back to school. We had so many issues her first year in middle school when she was in the 6th grade, but now we're going to try it again and see how it goes for 8th grade. So she did actually a lot better overseas opposed to here in America, because the children picked on her a lot here in America.
Well, I have so many questions for you. I'm not even sure where to start. One of the things I wanted to just acknowledge is, we did an episode on the fact that autism presents differently in girls. And it sounds like that is something that you had to contend with as well, that there just seems to be such a lack of understanding about what autism looks like. And that's really tricky when you as a parent, you followed your instinct and you knew something wasn't right. You knew the ADHD wasn't a connection. How did you eventually get the assessment that you needed?
It was really, really tough. I mean, everyone kept telling me that she's just got ADHD. And then I even had teachers, not teachers, but I had a doctor tell me that's not what it is. She doesn't have anything. She's just being rebellious. And I'm like, how are you telling me this? And her grades are not, her grades are not anywhere near where they should be. And it's not that she doesn't know the content. It's just something else is going on. And so finally, I just went to this last place and I said, this is it. This is it after this. And they said, you're right. And they linked us up with a really, really good therapist that has been phenomenal in helping me and my daughter, because when I told her, because I explained to her that she had ADHD, because I don't like keeping her out of the dark on anything, because we live in an age where technology is just everywhere. And she's extremely into the computers and Google, so she can pick her cell phone up and Google whatever it is that she thinks that she has questions to, because that's just what they do. So I just told her. And so it made her feel a certain kind of way when I told her that. And then for me to turn back around and say, well, you know what? Guess what? You don't have ADHD. Now you have this. And so she's just like, what? And so it shattered her a little bit. And so then we got on the internet and I started showing her these amazing people that also were autistic and that they were brilliant. And when she saw that, it was like her eyes, I could see in her eyes that she was just a lot more confident opposed to how she felt before, because she felt sort of like, now I'm going to have to go to these special classes and I'm going to be labeled. No, you're not. You're beautifully made how God intended you to be. So, and that's perfectly fine. So it was a difficult journey.
Yeah. Yes. That's tricky to navigate. And especially when you have people saying she's just rebellious, which just makes me cringe, when these kids get labeled as just oppositional or non-compliant. So I'm really happy that you got the information you needed. And I also want to just circle back. Like, it sounds like your daughter has related now and realized what a superpower she has. And the fact that she was able to learn Arabic in a year is pretty incredible to me. And that's certainly part of how she's wired, right? To be able to do something like that.
It was amazing because, she would sit in her room and just study the alphabet, and she would listen to I've never seen anything like that before. I speak Spanish fluently and I know French, but it was over a period of time. It was not me learning it like that.
No, we've been in the Netherlands coming up on 4 years, and I'm still really struggling with Dutch. And well, Asher, he's okay, but he does not have that drive at all. It's not an area of interest for him at all. So maybe he should have a conversation with your daughter. But that's really cool. Now, I wanted to just ask you, you talked about not having support from your community and from your family. Is that part of what spurred your move to move abroad? Tell me what went into that decision. Darren and I are prepping for a big move at the moment, so we are fully leaning into any and everything that simplifies things, and that absolutely includes mealtimes. At a time when my executive functioning skills are being pushed to the limit, even planning and executing dinner for our family these days can feel like a really big lift. That's why I'm especially grateful for Green Chef, a meal service that offers pre-measured and prepped ingredients to my door. Each box is packed with foods you can feel good about, like whole fruits and vegetables, plus lean protein and whole grain options. In fact, one of the things I love most about Green Chef is that they offer options that prioritize gut and brain health, with science-backed recipes that feature ingredients like fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3 fatty acids. During this time of lots of stress, it feels really grounding to know we're supporting ourselves nutritionally. I will take all the support I can get. And Green Chef doesn't just cover dinner recipes. I can add high-quality breakfasts, lunches, and snacks to my weekly box from Green Market. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Synbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Synbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon. And that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Synbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Synbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Synbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off.
So when I was in undergrad and I completely finished and I got my bachelor's degree, I felt so accomplished. And that is a huge accomplishment. My daughter saw me graduate, and that was what I wanted her to see. So that I did it, you can do it too. So I was looking for work, and I was actually supposed to go to law school. But when my daughter had got diagnosed with autism, that's when I just said, this is not the direction that I want to go, because I want to be in a career where I can have available, ready resources to me, where I can be able to help her. And the only career that I knew that I could do that was to become an educator. So I was looking for jobs online, and I saw a job online for a teacher in South Korea. And I was like, no, this will never work. And I'm like, I can't do this. And like, God, that would be so amazing. I'm like, my daughter would learn to speak another language. And I'm like, this would be so awesome. And I applied, and they actually offered me the job. Wow. And they knew that I was a single mom. They offered me the job, and I just was like, I chickened out, and I never stepped forth with the idea of it again. And then a few years later, my friend did it. She moved to Abu Dhabi, and I was just like, oh my God, I should do it. And then I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm too scared. And then I met a lady, and she was a part of this really phenomenal group of single moms that are all over the world. And these mothers, they enlightened me, and I was so in awe that they were teachers, principals, and they were living all over the world with their children, and they were traveling. And I was just like, I can do this. I can really, really do this. And so I applied, and I just went for it, and I left. The lack of support from my family, it played a little bit of a part of into us leaving, but those problems with them were still there. So I had to address that before I left, because those same issues that I felt within myself in regards to not having that support were going to follow me when I left the country. So those issues had to be resolved in order for me to, me and my daughter to be living anywhere, whether we stayed in Texas or in another state or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't really the huge issue. It was just I was inspired by other women who were living abroad and traveling with their children. And that's what made me decide to just do that big leap.
Wow. Yeah, it is a huge leap. And I just hats off to you. You used the word chickened out when you were talking about the opportunity in South Korea. And then when this came up, you said you were too scared. And I just want to acknowledge the amount of bravery that it took for you to do what you did. I mean, when we first moved here, I remember meeting with a therapist who specializes in working with expat kids. And I was having a conversation with her and I said, where are my people? Like, where are the expats who have differently wired kids? She's like, they tend not to move. Like, they're too afraid to take the leap because they're afraid of not having the infrastructure or, just the unknowns.
Right.
And so I moved to a European country that probably is a lot more similar to our culture in the US than I would imagine things are in Kuwait, although I have no idea. You'd have to tell me. But as a single mom taking that leap with your child, I think it's fantastic. And it sounds like it has paid off.
It's definitely different in Kuwait than it is in America. It's it's nothing like America. The educational system, most of the schooling there is based on a British curriculum. That's one of the biggest things. And then everything from the food and the attire, there's no specific dress code that the women have to wear, or women have rights there. But other than that, it's just like culturally wise, it's different. Mm-hmm. So it's not like America. So it was definitely a different situation for us. But I thought when I got there, I was just so scared. I'm like, I made the biggest mistake in my life.
Yeah.
My daughter is going to hate it. She's not going to want to do this. But she actually did research on her own. So she was more excited about the move than I was. I was excited, but I think she became more excited because she wanted to learn another language. And then she taught herself how to write words in Arabic before we had even left America.
Wow.
And it just became more and more her being more comfortable with it. And when we got there, she loved it. She just was so excited. So it's different. And I told her it's okay to be different. If you just because you're different or something is different doesn't mean that you don't like it. Try to see if you can find out a little bit about that thing or that situation and then make your analysis based on that if you want to go forward and continue to go with it. And she did, and she loves it.
That's fantastic. So she's looking forward to going back then.
She's really excited. She's not looking forward to the 16-hour plane ride, but
yeah, that's rough. That is rough. So I wanted to just ask you, as a single parent, everything kind of falls onto you, especially if you're not getting the support from your community or family that some other families might have. One of the things that I am a huge advocate for is self-care and just being kind of relentlessly selfish about that as much as you can be. And I'm wondering, have you found ways to weave self-care into your life? Like, how do you basically take care of yourself emotionally, physically?
Well, that has just recently been something that I've been implementing. It was a lot of reading that I had to do in order to realize, okay, you don't have a husband, you don't have that good support system that you need. So you really have to have time for you. And then I was reading a lot of people saying you have to take care of yourself, because if you're not taking care of yourself, who's going to be there to take care of that little girl if something happens to you? Mm-hmm. So I started incorporating an hour and a half to sometimes 2 hours a day of reading. I just read and meditate. And I do a lot of meditating in the morning time. While she's still asleep, I'll meditate for about 30 to 45 minutes. And then I'll usually go walking. And sometimes, unfortunately, the walking entails both of us instead of just me by myself, but it's okay. So the best self-care that I do for myself is in the morning, meditating and then reading. I feel totally different. You get the day started and you look at the world different, and then I'm ready to go. I don't care if I don't accomplish anything else off that list, but meditating and reading, those are the two things that I absolutely do in the morning that I have to do.
Yeah, I love the idea of meditation, and I've flirted with it a few times, but I just have not been able to make that a routine. I've started doing yoga a few months ago.
And that's something that I've also incorporated too, because I feel better. I just really feel better after I do that. But I don't go to classes. I do a DVD. I have a DVD that I do here.
I'm a YouTube yoga girl for sure. Yes. I don't have time to go to a yoga studio and do the whole setup and, but I can squeeze out 15 minutes of my pajamas with YouTube. That works for me. I wanted to just circle back if and it's totally up to you if you're comfortable talking about this. And if you're not, then just say so. That's totally fine.
Okay.
You mentioned that you really wanted to address the lack of support among your family before you left. Because, as you said, and it's so true, those problems are not going away, even if you're not here. Have you been able to come to a better place with that and gotten the support that you need?
Actually, no. But because I'm reading a book now on forgiveness, and I had to really, really look back at certain things in my life, that situations that happened, and I had to realize, okay, maybe I was the reason why these things, because I'm a strong advocate for the law of attraction and think and believe that it's not a coincidence that things just happen. So maybe I brought those things into existence by my subconscious or, way of thinking. And so I forgave myself for certain things. And then I had to just basically let it go, because sometimes when people are stuck in their ways, they're not going to be moved. And I just had to realize that. And once I relinquished all of that, then it made me into a happier space that I was in. And you just move on and move forward. Yeah. Because at this point, I don't have time to worry about what others think or what their idea or perception of parenting should look like for me, because this is the routine and the best setup that I've been doing, that what works best for me and my daughter. So I just follow my own bliss.
Ooh, I like that. Yes. And you're absolutely right. That's something I think we all, to some degree, have to come to that place of just knowing that we can't control what other people think. But it can be so especially hard if it's family members who are, judging or just not getting it. We did an episode about this actually on what to do when friends and family don't get it. And it's really tricky because they're family. Like you have, you're in relationship with them in some way, you're connected. But yeah, I mean, coming to a place of peace with that. And also it sounds like you sound so certain in your knowing of who you are as a mom, who your daughter is, what her gifts are, and how you want to parent. So moving through with that certainty and confidence, I'm sure you can come to a place of peace.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what your, biggest, I don't know if it's baggage or personal triggers, but what have been for you the trickiest situations that you've been in with your daughter? And then would you mind sharing with us how you've addressed them or how you've kind of learned how to deal with them?
The trickiest one so far, I think that we've been really kind of honing in on and talking about often, is her insecurities and her feelings and her emotions and the way that her being influenced by other people, because she's the sweetest little girl. And sometimes I think people can take advantage of people when they know how sweet and kind and nice a person is. Mm-hmm. And so with her, she doesn't look at people like they're evil, bad, or whatever. She looks at everyone like they have all this good instilled in them until they do something innately wrong to her. And then it remains in her heart. Like she says, she has a memory like an elephant. That's what she tells me. My memory is like an elephant. I never forget anything. So she remembers things. when someone does something really bad to her. So one of the things that we've just been talking about lately is, her feelings. How do you feel about this? This is what you do to react to that. We had an instance where a friend, well, she thought was a friend, was being kind of mean to her. But then when she had something that she wanted, then she became nice to her. And the same went with a family member that was treating her like that. And I had to explain to her, that's not okay for people to do you like that. And if anyone at any given time treats you like that, you feel comfortable to walk away from that. But don't allow people to treat you any way that you wouldn't want to be treated. If they make you feel bad, for whatever reason. And I think this one particular family member, I think it mainly has to do with jealousy because my daughter has been able to travel outside of the country and this particular person hasn't. And so I just told her, you don't feel bad because you're in a situation where your mother is able to give you those things, because you're blessed. That other person, we don't know what their situation is. And that doesn't make you better than them. And that doesn't make you less of a person because you're collecting passport stamps and whatever their mother wants that child's life to be. That doesn't make either one of you better or less than anything. Mm-hmm. You're the same. So we've been having lots and lots of talks about that. Mm. And I think the talks have worked and listening to her and how she feels. And then we also color. We color too. We color a lot. We do puzzles. Whenever I feel like she's getting ready to have a meltdown, we go get coloring books and we just color.
Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered, the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it, and anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
And now there's so many great coloring books available. Like
Yes.
coloring is back in vogue.
Yes.
That's really great. What a fun thing to do together.
Yes. And I've gotten them at like, I don't know if they have them overseas, but I've stocked up on them here, and they have them at the dollar store. They may have them at thrift stores or whatever type of market, but they're inspirational coloring books. So they have positive affirmations. So while she's coloring, while she sees these words, she's taking it in too. And then I'll ask her different things. Okay, so how do you feel about this? If and it says you're amazing or you're awesome, or it was another one that says that you can move mountains. That's what one of them I remember said. And I said, do you think that you can move a mountain? And, and she explained, and we both talked about that. So coloring is one of the things that kind of helps both of us too. And that's also a part of my self-care plan, is coloring by myself sometimes.
I love that. I think you talk about something that is a really good point, that a lot of differently wired kids, but I think especially kids who are autistic or are highly sensitive kids, they can be especially vulnerable to not really understanding necessarily social cues. Or, when you described the way your daughter is in terms of giving everyone the benefit of the doubt and assuming people are kind, my son is the exact same way. But if you prove him otherwise, you are off the list like forever. But it's tricky. And I think that's such an important lesson, especially for girls, that self-advocacy and learning how to, what is and isn't okay, and how to speak up for yourself, and just kind of learning how to navigate those tricky situations. So it's so good to hear that you're able to have those conversations. And I love that you've created kind of a ritual around how to build those skills through the coloring. My thing with Asher is we do jigsaw puzzles and we listen to podcasts, often about politics or world events. But it always sparks just fantastic philosophical conversations. And those are some of my favorite times with him.
Then my daughter would fit in comfortably with you guys, because I don't know, she just finds the weirdest things that like she wants to be interested in. So many years ago, I worked at the Science Museum here in Texas, and my daughter used to come with me to work. They allowed this. She would come with me to work. And they had these lectures where these well-known scholarly people were teaching these lectures, and she would be the only child sitting in these lectures, and she just thought it was interesting. Anyone else, I would see parents buy tickets for their children to come to these lectures, and they would be having fits and tantrums and I don't want to go to these lectures. This is so boring. But she didn't do that. She'd take her ticket and she'd go sit in there, and she was interested.
Yeah.
And she likes talking about politics too.
It's pretty cool to have a child who's interested. I mean, I said to Darren, my husband, well, now you're off the hook. You don't have to have these, you don't have to listen to me have these lengthy, diatribes about this or that, because Asher's more than happy to go there with me. That's awesome. So listen, I want to check in with you just on one last thing before we say goodbye. And I'm really curious kind of about you personally. Like, one of the things I'm so interested in is how we as parents go through our own personal transformation in coming to a place of acceptance or understanding who our kid is and just embracing who they are. And I just love hearing the way you talk about your daughter, and it's clear that you have such a close relationship with her, and you've obviously made big decisions, taken big leaps in support of who she is. And I'm just wondering for you personally, what has your kind of personal transformation been like? How has being your daughter's mother transformed you?
It's transformed me in so many ways, but I guess would probably be my like Oprah aha moment was when I finished with undergrad, and I realized that, she was actually going to school with me too. I mean, she knew so much for her age, and then I realized that I've given her an opportunity, even though we were struggling horribly. I was on government assistance. I was doing horribly. And I'm like, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm giving my daughter something that most people can't give their children. And she's able to see me, at this state, and that I'm actually trying. And so I guess it was after I had graduated, it was when I realized that this is it. I did this and I made this wonderful little human being, and she's just awesome. So, and there were so many more other moments, but that was the biggest one, was after I had graduated with my bachelor's degree. And I think ever since then, it's just been about her. No one else, just her.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for just sharing your story. I'm so interested in just hearing how other people navigate this path, this unmarked path, which I always say, that all of us raising these unique kids, there's no one way that it's going to look. There's no guidebook. There's no, map. So I think this is just so insightful and hopefully inspirational for other people listening to hear about your journey. So thank you for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. For the show notes for this episode, including the resources Brandy and I talked about, visit tiltparenting.com/session64. If you haven't yet tried our free virtual Differently Wired 7-day challenge, I strongly encourage you to sign up. The challenge features short daily videos and a private Facebook group, all centered around helping parents be intentional and purposeful in parenting their atypical kids. The challenge is free and it's ongoing. If you want to join us, just sign up at tiltparenting.com/7day. And lastly, if you like what you heard on today's episode and you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to our podcast on iTunes or leaving a review. Both things help our podcast get more visibility. Thanks again for listening. For more information on Tilt Parenting, visit www.tiltparenting.com.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.